First, I'd say we need to elect people to Congress who have done things in their life that suggest they're people of character. All right. I think I've spent most of my younger life and adult life in worthy endeavors. I'll let you be the judge of that, certainly. But so I look at my background. You know, the 10 years I spent in the military and serving others, my current service on the board of a pro-life ministry, and as a deputy prosecutor down in Orange County. You know, these may or may not be compelling things to you, but I think for many people to say, all right, those are probably worthy endeavors. The second thing what I like to see among candidates are candidates who have something to fall back on. In other words, I'm not going to be so dependent upon the title Member of Congress, Representative, that Congressman, that I will be tempted to vote a way that violates my own moral code, my values, my promises to potential constituents. So that's the second thing I'd say. Finally, and this might not matter to many people, but I have a faith. I think that grounds me to some extent. I do believe in causes greater than myself. You don't have to have, many would argue, a faith to believe in causes greater than yourself. That's one of the things that drives me. And then finally, and I don't really say this tongue-in-cheek, it's kind of funny, I guess, but if you've met my wife, Jenny, she also helps keep me straight and narrow. She's my partner in life, and she's a strong personality. And were I to get too big for my britches and lose my way a bit, you better bet Jenny Tucker Young would help kind of rein me in a little bit. So those are some different answers. And then finally, I'm pretty confident about this. I'm aware of the temptations. I'm aware that good people go there, they lose their way. Sometimes they find their way back. But I invite people that if I get off track and they're uncomfortable with my leadership, please send me home. You know, my life is probably better now and will be better should I remain here in southern Indiana than if I go to Washington. But I'm involved in this because I think it's an incredibly important period of time for our country, and I think I have something to offer. Did I kind of get... Thank you. Larry.
Todd, with the advent of all the rogue nations, North Korea, Iran, many others actually, and their development of nuclear weapons, their development of multi-stage intercontinental missiles, what do you think of the wisdom, if any, involved in the president not funding the missile defense system? It would seem like the most logical thing that we could do in a world that's unsafe. And there are many people who can very inexpensively now get into the bad business of sending rockets. It's 33 minutes from any point in the world to any place in the United States by a missile. So what do you think about that?
I think I know what you think. Yeah. And I agree with you, actually, based on how your question was asked. I think I can infer that you were unhappy with the decision to defund what was lampooned years ago as the Star Wars program. Ronald Reagan, who was a visionary in so many ways, said, look, we need to guard against the threat of these intercontinental ballistic missiles raining down on the American people. So he took some action. He started to invest a whole lot of money. And we need to continue to spend some of our precious treasure on defending the American people against that very threat. So I absolutely agree with you, Larry. It's a dangerous world out there, more dangerous than I'm comfortable with. And now we can team up with other countries. And this is sometimes where alliances, we often hear people critical of our alliances internationally, and I'm critical sometimes, but we can combine our resources to help address some of these issues. that would be one way to mitigate some of the cost. When you've got Iran developing weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, and then Shabazz 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles that can find their way into our European allies and ultimately to the continental United States in later stages of those missiles, then we've got some serious challenges here as a country. And yeah, so a long-winded response. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You made reference to 33 minutes. There's a movie out there that was produced by the Heritage Foundation, which I mentioned earlier. It was my employer for a period of time. It is a really sobering movie, and if you're not sure where you feel about that issue, you might take a look at that movie.
I don't know whether you touched on education or not, but you know, we look at China where they go to school 12 hours a day, India, so where they're starting to outstrip us in technology and so on. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. Let me first say that I think education should be a state and a local level issue. And ideally, an issue where we empower parents to send their children to the best schools, as long as those schools meet certain core requirements. In today's day and age, it's a form of child neglect to completely not educate your children, so we do have to have some standards there, I believe. So I favor vouchers. I favor competition with the government schools, the public schools. I don't favor eliminating public schools, but they ought to be able to compete for money that's going to educate children, compete with parochial schools, compete with private schools, and even compete with homeschoolers. You know, if parents receive some sort of coupon, some voucher worth the amount of money that would be spent towards their child in a public school, and they could use that coupon to go out and buy educational resources to educate their own kids, well, to me that is a really good idea. So I favor all those sorts of initiatives. But I'm very careful to say, again, that I think this is a state and local level issue. Now, you talked about where I normally start with education, which is this is a national security issue. It's an economic issue and a national security issue. The Chinese, the Indians do, in many respects, seem to be taking education more seriously than we are. And if we don't have a very well-educated populace, we're not going to have the jobs of tomorrow. We're not going to prepare our children for them, the highest paying jobs. We won't have one of the strongest economies in the world, looking way into the future if our children aren't well educated. And when we cease to be the wealthiest country in the world, we will also cease to be the most powerful country in the world, militarily. So there are all sorts of implications here in this international, globalized economy. We're not educating our children as well as we ought to be.
We touched on a couple of things here on national security, fear, technology, the ability of a police officer to pull you over, take your driver's license, and run a complete history on your background. The FBI, my understanding is the Patriot Act, can invade your privacy, find out everything about you through your attorneys, your banks, your other financial institutions, insurance companies. They can go in without a warrant and completely find out everything about you. I think that's in violation of the Fourth Amendment, unless I'm mistaken. And how do you feel about that? Are we better off safe, or are we better off having the right to copy?
I still believe in the Fourth Amendment. I don't believe that if someone comes into this country with a student visa or a work visa, I don't believe it's a violation of their right to set a precondition on their entry. In other words, you can enter this country, but only if you allow us to track you in the Department of Homeland Security database. Right? We've made a contract